Daf Pei Gimel Amid Aleph will begin Daf Pei Beis Amid Beis, 7 lines from the bottom at the 2 dots. Rabbi Yechon ben Roika Aimer. We had a machlekes in the Mishnah. We learned in the Mishnah what is the size of the shtei sudas that is needed for the Eruv. Rabbi Yechon ben Roika said it's a mekikar bepunjan. If you can purchase a loaf of bread, a kikar with a punjan, and the purchase price of a dalet soin besela. A sela you can purchase you can purchase dalet soin, 4 soin with a sela. Dalet soin are 24 kabin. There are 6 kabin in a saw. 4 soin is 24 kabin. So therefore, with a sela, which is the equivalent to 48 punjanim, there's 48 punjanim, you can buy with that which it purchases 48 with a 48 punjanim. You can purchase this kikar that has 24 kabin. That means that you have for each punjan, you have a 48th of this, so that means it's a half a kav. A sela is 48 punjan. So the equivalent of a sela, in other words, you can purchase with a sela 24 kabin. A punjan is a 48th of a sela. So that means you can purchase a half a kav. So that means that the size of the kikar is a half a kav according to Rav Broka. Rav Shimon said that the shtei yaris l'kikar mishalosh l'kav. Rav Shimon said that the loaf that we're talking about over here is where 3 of these loaves are made up from a kav. A kav makes 3 loaves, and what we need for the Eruv is 2/3 of that loaf. 2/3 of the loaf is the suit of 2 meals. That means each meal is 1/3 of that loaf. So there are 3 kikaras in a kav. That means that each kikar has only 1/3 of a kav. And each suda, there's 2 suda, 2/3 is 2 sudas. 1 suda is 1/3 of a kav. That means that 1 suda is 1/9 of a kav. So zok the Gemara, Rav Yechon ben Rokai Metano Kraim Divrei Li'Yishon. So in the Brisa that it's close to each other. The shear of Rav Yechon ben Rokai and Rav Shimon are close to each other. They approximate each other. Frank the Gemara Midami. How can you say that they are close to each other? The Rav Yechon and Arba Sudas L'Kav. According to Rav Yechon ben Nori, there are 4 sudas in a kav. He said that the mazen shtei sudas is a half a kav. That means 1 suda is 1/4 of a kav. 1 suda, that means in 1 kav you can have 4 sudas. There's 4 sudas in a kav. And Rav Shimon, Tesha sudas l'kav, and according to Shimon, it's 1/9 of a kav is 1 suda. That means there are 9 sudas in a kav. So what does that mean that they're close together? Omer of Hofstedter say mehem shlit l'chanvani. He said, no. When we said that there is that amount of grain, there's a half a kav of grain in the mazen of 2 sudas, meaning that each suda there's 1/4 of a kav of grain, and that is what the amount that the grocer can buy it from the wholesaler. But then when he sells it on the market, so he has to mark up the price to take into account that his expenses, his labor, etc., and his profit. So he has to mark it up. So therefore, you have to add on to that a shlit l'chanvani. So therefore, when we add on 1/3, there are not 4 sudas in a kav. That would be at the wholesale price. But since the chanvani is adding 1/3 to that, therefore it's not 2 sudas or a half a kav. It's 1/3 of a kav, and therefore there aren't 4 sudas in a kav. Once you add on the markup of the grocer, there are 6 sudas in a kav, because you have to add on the 1/3. Frank the Gemara, but it's still not close to each other, because according to Shimon, there are 9 sudas in a kav, and according to Yechon, there's 6. The Gemara says, no, which Rav Chisda said that the markup is 50%. So therefore, instead of having 4 sudas for the kav, it's now 8 sudas for a kav. So it's double. There's 8 sudas for a kav, and therefore you have 8 instead of 4. It's still not the same because according to Rishim it's 9, according to Riyach and Baruch, even according to this it's 8. I know the Gemara says yes, but that's what it means kravim. They're close to each other. It's not exactly the same, but they're close. Well, it seems to be a stira. Rav Chisda is the grocer's markup. Is it a third or is it a half? Where it says leikash. The difference is where the buyer, does he provide the wood for the baking, the firewood, or does he not provide the wood? If he provides the wood, so the markup is only a third. If he doesn't provide the wood, then the markup is 50%. So we learned in the Mishnah that half of that amount, half of the amount that are needed for the sudas, is what is now we say for a Beis HaMenuga, that if in a house that has a tzaras, how long does a person have to stay in the house to where we say that not only it's heat tummy but it's clothes are tummy as well? It's a half of that, half of the share of the Erev. And chetzi chetzia lifts all the segvi. If a person eats machol which are tummy, that his body midrabanan becomes tummy. Tana the chetzi chetzia tummy to masaychlim, and half of that. Half of the amount that is metama the person's body, half of that is metama tumas eichlim. That if there is a food that is the size of half of that, half of the shear of the tamas gevia, that tamidik food will be able to be metama other things as well. But why didn't he bring down the din of Tumas Eichlim? Because they're not exact. It's not an exact of shear of half of that, as we'll see. Desanya, because we learned the Brisa Kama Shir Chatzi Pras. What is the shear of a Chatzi Pras, which we said that if a person eats that of Tomatika food, the body becomes Tomei. What is the shear of Chatzi Pras? Beisim Chaser Kima, 2 eggs minus a small insignificant amount. How do we get to 2 beis? So now, all of the shitas in this brayso are going according to Rishimon. Rishimon said that the kikar that we discussed in the Mishnah, the kikar is a third of a kav. So that's the kikar. Half of it would be, when we say half of it for Beis HaMenuga, that would be a sixth of the kav. Now, a sixth of a kav, when we say a kav, in one kav, there are 24 beim. So a sixth of that are four eggs. And then half of that is livsel segvia, would be two beim. So he says that the first shita is beis beim chaser kima. However, there's a little bit less than that because the size of the eggs vary. And he said, therefore, the size of the eggs, as opposed to in earlier times, differed somewhat. So it's 2 eggs less a small, insignificant amount. Div Rav Yehuda, that's the sheet of Rav Yehuda. Rav Yosef, beis beim seiches. He says, no, it's 2 beim, but it's seiches. It's measured loosely. It's a little bit more. So that's what the shita. Shir Rebbe says beis beim v'oid. It's 2 beim and a little extra little bit. How much is that? Become a void. How much is that? Echad me'esrem bebeya. It's 1/20th of a beim. For the 2 beim, it's 10%, and therefore for each beya, it's a 1/20th. So therefore, it's a 1/20th. Rather, it's 1/20th per egg, and therefore for the 2 it's a 1 plus 10%. So it's 2.1. Now that's going to be the shear of the tamei, the geviyah, the tamei, the person's body. But as far as tumas eichlim, we learned how much it's the shear of the food that has tumas eichlim. Tumas eichlim, Tanya b'nasan Rav Deisa Amro kebeya shamar k'may klipas. It's like a beya with the shell. Plus the shell. They say with the egg without the shell. But it's not exactly 50% of what we had before by the tumah of the body. So it's not the exact 50%. They vary the shear by tumas eichlim, and therefore that's why it's not mentioned. That's their shitas. But they say the measure is 1.5. The measure of half a pras is 1.5 and a little bit more, large eggs. And that's the shita of a Rechen ben Broika, that according to his shita is 1.5 eggs. So previously we were going according to Rav Shimon. Now, they said according to Rav Yochanan, we said that there were the amount was four sudas in a kav. So there had four. Each suda therefore is a quarter of a kav. Each suda is a quarter of a kav, and there are 4 loaves rather in a kav. Each loaf is a quarter of a kav. A quarter of a kav is 6 bayim. There's 24 bayim in a kav, so a quarter of it is 6 bayim, and therefore the pras is half of that is 3, and a chetzi is 1.5. So Gemara says pshita. Well, of course, that's the calculation according to Rechen ben Broika. Gemara says in Yomi Masechet also lashmina. The chiddush that he's saying only is not that it's 1.5 bayim, but that's seiches. It's a little bit more. It's loosely measured. He also he once sent him a measurement called a kundis, which is the measuring keli that used in the usa. V'shir Rebbe Masan Usheva Esrim Beya, and he measured that, and it had 217 eggs in it. So that was a very large keli. Now the Gemara is going to attempt to see how that works out. Where do we come to the shear of 217 Beya? So this was a measurement that equated to a saw, but the Gemara is now working out the calculation. A saw doesn't have that quantity of eggs. The midboris, if it's a saw of midboris, kuf mem dalaran, it's 144. It's 144 eggs, because a saw is 6 calves. And we had 6 kav. There are in 6 kavim, you have 24 eggs in a kav. So if a saw is 6 kav, it's 6 times 24. 6 times 24 is 144. So that's how we understand where the shear of a saw is 144. Either Yerushalmius, Kufain Gimel, and if it's a Yerushalmius, we said that in Yerushalmi that was larger, they increased it by a fifth. So if they increase it by a fifth, then it's 173. V'yedetzi Peiris, then it's Reish Zayin Haven, it's 207. Because they increased over there again at a later time, they also increased it by a fifth. So in any event, even if you take the largest shear, you don't have 217. Even if you take the largest shear of a saw, you only have 207, which is the Yerushalmius. So how did this come to be? How did they get the shear? Why was it measured 217? The more answers lo'el tzipor, and really it's a measure of tzipor, which was 207. But I say chalsa shadaloyo. But when they did the larger shear, they added onto it the shear of challah that would normally be taken from it. And they added on the shear of challah to the 207. So frankly, more chalsa kama. Well, what's the shear of challah? The shear of challah is only 8 eggs. It's only eggs, because the shear of challah is 1/24. So it's approximately 8 eggs. It's not exactly, but it's 8 eggs would come to a 192. So you still have a remainder left over. But if you divide 192 by the shear of the challah, of 124, to divide 192 by 24, then you'll have 8 eggs, and there's a slight remainder. So therefore, that still only comes to 215 and a fraction, but it's only 215. A kati balsalai, still, it's not the amount what they had, which is 217. Ella, the Gemara says, the Rebbe shadei. Take the increased amount that Rebbe said. Rebbe said because of the discrepancy in the size of the eggs, you have to add on a 20th. So take that 20th of Rebbe and add on to it, and then you'll have the amount of 217. How is that? There's 207 eggs, as we said, and the size of it is 207. If you take a 20th of it is 10 plus 0.7, so it's 217. You take a 20th of 207, taking 10% would be 20, taking half of that is 10, and then you still have the 20th of the 7. So you have a 20th of 20 is 10, a 20th of 7 is 0.35, 10% would be 0.7, and that's 0.35, and that's how you have the 217. It's a little bit more. More says, but that fractional amount, that small amount, is less than a beya, and therefore it's not calculated. So that's how we approximate it. Tana Rabbanan, Saw Yerushalmius Yisrael al Midbar Shtus. The Saw of Yerushalmius is more than the Midbar Shtus. As we said before, that the Saw is, first they had, the size of it was in the Midbar, and they added on to it, so that was 144. Then Yerushalayim, they added on, they increased the size, so it was 173. So the Gemara says that was a shtus. Now, when we say it's a shtus, it means that it's a shtus on the gross up amount. It's really a fifth of 144, but it's milbar. Once you add on the fifth 144 to it, your total, once you have your total of 173, that is the additional amount is a sixth of 173. Then we said that the Tzipor is Yisrael al Yerushalayim Shtos. Then the Tzipori they added on to again. Again, it was added by a sixth. So what do we mean over here, a sixth? Well, we mean to say it's a fifth, and in the fifth, therefore, when you add that on to the gross up amount, to the 207, it's the additional amount is a sixth of the 207. And then it turns out that the tziporis are Yisrael midboris shlish, that the tziporis are more than the midboris by a third. So shlish taman, what does it mean? A third of what? Ilim shlish the midboris, if you say that it's a third larger than the midboris, michde shlish the midboris kama hava. What we said, 100, the midboris is 144. How much is a third? 104. It's 48, and it's 48. But the discrepancy between the two is not 48; it's 63. So that can't be what it means. Maybe you'll say it means a third of the Yerushalmi. Well, how much is a third of that? It is 58 and minus a third. It's 58 over 57 and 2/3, and bam. And like we said before, the discrepancy over them is 63, not 57 and 2/3. So what does that mean? You mean to say that the difference is a third of the tzipori. Well, shlish dido kam hava. What is a third of the 207? Shlish dido kam hava shiv nachichana. The tzipori is 207. If you take a third over that, what's the size of a third? How much is a third of 207? It's 70 minus 1. It means it's 69 eggs. Ve'ilu, like we said before, oitva samach gimel. But the tzipori more than midboris is not 69, it's 63. Elam Rabbi Yirmiyah hachikam nimsa sa'a shel tzipori yiser al midboris. It comes out that the saw of tzipor is more than the boris korov l'shlish shalom, more than a third of itself. Right, a third of itself is, we said that is 69, and the difference is 63, so it's approximately ushlish shalom, and a third of the tzipori korov l'mechsa, the midboris, is approximately a half of the midboris. The midboris is 144. And so half of the midboris is 144, is 72. So the 69 is approximately 72. It's close to it. Moskov lo Ravina mida karav katan. It doesn't say it's approximately. Elam Ravina was subshad hachi kamra nimsas shlish shel sibori v'oid shel Rebbe Yisrael al mechsa shel midbar shlishu beya. He says that it's nimsa the shlish shel sipari, a third of the sipari amount, which we said a third of the sipari amount is 69. V'oid shel Rebbe plus the 20th of Rebbe. So you have 69, then if you add 69 plus you take a 20th third, so 10% would be 6.9, and a 20th is half of that is 3.45. If you add that on, then Nimsas Shlishal Siforim Bevoidzo Shel Rebbe Yisera Al Mechsa Shel Midboras, it's more than the 72 in Bar Shlish Beya. It's a third of the Beya more. Because when you add on this V'oid, so you're adding on 3 to the 69 is 72, plus a third of the Beya. So that's how you come to that calculation.